Hello everyone, and welcome back to DiabloCast, your Diablo 3 podcast. Here we keep you up to date on all things Diablo 3 related and share with you our thoughts and opinions on anything going on in the world of Diablo 3. As always, I'm your host, Dennis Forrest Duhamel, and with me as always, we've got Kevin Sixen Carlino.
What's going on, guys?
And the return of a special guest, Dylan Tempest Foot.
Hey, hello all.
And just before we get started today, we got to say a little prayer for our buddy Cyber Dragon. He's actually no longer going to be with us. We can't find the time to get the podcast in, which is absolutely fine. He's got plenty of other obligations. So just everyone, leave your comments below. Say a fond farewell to our buddy Tyler. It is very unfortunate that he's not going to be a regular part of this podcast because we definitely loved having him on. Doesn't get much better than Jonah Hill.
So yeah, no doubt.
So anyways, it was nice having Tyler, and sorry to see him go. He may be coming periodically for some random guest appearances, but in terms of being a regular member, unfortunately that's not going to be the case. All right, and of course, we also want to apologize for the lateness of this DiabloCast. Typically, you're going to expect to see these every Friday until we maybe announce otherwise, but that's the set schedule. We just had some scheduling conflicts, and it's pretty much all Kevin's fault. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is all my fault. These last couple of days have been pretty busy. I was actually up at Blizzard, so I mean, you guys should all be able to forgive me for that. I think that's probably like the one actual decent excuse.
The one excuse that would fly.
Yeah, the one that you guys would all be okay with. So yeah, I mean, I was actually up at Blizzard previewing the StarCraft 2 expansion. And then Friday morning I woke up like ridiculously sick, but I was still in California Friday morning. So yeah, I got back yesterday, pretty much passed out all day, and here we are today.
Yeah, he's a jerk. You can blame him.
I'm a jerk. I know.
Send him hate mail.
Yeah.
But let's just go ahead and get right into this week's DiabloCast. Now, major topics this week are going to be, we're going to be taking a look at the Runestone system, talking about giving our thoughts and opinions and everything going on with that. I'm also going to be discussing the removal of the Talisman. The Talisman was officially removed as of the last time we heard. That could, of course, return, but it doesn't look like it's going to. Then we're going to do a recap of the last poll that we had from the last DiabloCast, and then, of course, jumping right into the Q&A. So with that said, let's just go ahead and jump right into our first topic, which is going to be Runestones in Diablo 3. All right, so we've known about Runestones for quite some time. This is not a surprise. This was nothing, we weren't caught with our pants down with the recent announcement of the Runestones in that video that was released. But we just kind of got some further clarification, and specifically the videos they showed us just gave us some really good examples of the Runestones. Now, just kind of a quick synopsis of what Runestones are. You're going to find them in the game. You put them into your spells, and they alter completely how the spells function. And if you can take a look at any of those Runestones videos that were made available, then you're going to see specific examples of how that works. So what we're going to be talking about, we're going to take a look at kind of the varying effects of the 5 different runestones. Also, we'd like to take a little bit of a look into the difference between runestones that are going to be used for the PvP environment and ones that are going to be more suited for PvE. And then we can talk about the difference in the runestone ranks. There's going to be 7 ranks between each runestone, so the Crimson Rune's going to be rank 1 up to 7, and we'll talk about the varying effects of that as well. So just go ahead and do with a general recap the 5 different runestones. We've got Golden, Crimson, Indigo, Obsidian, and Alabaster. Now, based on the video footage that we saw, we kind of have a general outline of how these things are going to work. It seems generally that Golden affects the resources, Crimson runes affect the damage, Indigo seems to generally affect the area of effect of spells, and then it seems like Obsidian and Alabaster are kind of a mixed bag. So before we go into that, though, personal thoughts and feelings, Kevin, on the Runestone system. What do you think about it, just as a general note?
I mean, I'm kind of happy with it. I like how it adds different flavor and different effects to whatever spells and stuff that we want to use. I mean, for example, you might not like the original Hydra, but maybe after adding like an Obsidian rune or whatever it is, it turns it into a arcane Hydra, shoots out magic missiles as opposed to fiery ones. So I mean, maybe you'll like the runed spell effects as opposed to the vanilla spell effects. So, like I was saying, it just adds a lot of flavor. A lot of different and various builds that you could potentially use. So,
yeah, absolutely, Kevin. Now, my hope with this, and I'm optimistic, is that it's going to help go away from the whole cookie cutter builds, where you have just a couple of builds that everyone in those classes participate in because they're simply the strongest. but because of how vastly the runes change every spell, that you can really tailor, almost any type of spec to fit your playstyle.
Yeah, and that definitely seems to be the case. And obviously, the biggest thing with this whole Runestone system, it's going to be customization. That's really the whole focus of it. That's the whole plan and the idea behind it. I know a major concern, honestly, for myself personally, was the idea of only having 7 active spells. But the fact that we can customize them completely to how we desire them to work is a really phenomenal thing. And to go into kind of a specific example, I know for one reason or another, a lot of people like to turn magic characters into a melee magic hybrid.
It's fun.
It's interesting, but usually they're not nearly as effective. Usually they're a gimped melee and a gimped caster instead of a super powerful caster or a super powerful melee. But a perfect example of this is if we take a look at from the recently announced video, you've got Ray of Frost. Okay, so a lot of these runes are gonna just alter the typical Ray of Frost like that a regular magic wielder would use. But you throw in an Indigo rune, and it turns it into a swirling vortex AoE that's kind of a close-ranged AoE. That seems incredibly well-suited for a melee-focused wizard. So it's these kind of things where, typically Ray of Frost wouldn't necessarily help a melee wizard, but you throw that Indigo rune in there, and all of a sudden you've got a close-range AoE, so once you're up in the battle swinging your sword or whatever, you can do a ton of magic damage around you as well. So that kind of customization is definitely really cool.
Actually,
and I'm sorry, Sixen.
No, I was just going to tag onto him. I mean, actually, if you combine that with something like Time Slow, it gives an AoE around you, so now you're slowing and damaging everything around you. I just wanted to add that in.
Mine was much less informative. I just wanted to say that it's probably the coolest animation I've seen to date. So if you have not seen the Indigo version of the Ray of Frost, go check that out on Diablo Fans or on the 4 Strategy Gaming, because it is amazing. You can see like the robes billowing. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, that's the visuals, and that's another big thing to really talk about. We talk about development time, and obviously it's going to be a little bit exceeding people's normal expectations. But obviously you kind of expect that with Blizzard franchise. But one thing that I do have to say is that the amount of effort that they've put into this is unbelievable. Most games have one spell, and that one spell looks like that spell. But this, you're going to have one spell, but depending on what rune you put into it, and even quite possibly something else we can talk in depth about, depending on what level of the rune, it's going to have a different animation and even a different sound. All of the different runestones for each spell in the clips that were given to us, they have different animations and different sounds. And then again, you add on top of that the different levels. So let's specifically talk about that Ray of Frost Indigo rune that has that really cool animation that puts an AoE around you. That's a level 1. You put a level 2 in there, and the area effect grows even larger. Presumably, that's at least what I'm thinking. Kevin, are you along that same thought process, or?
I mean, it makes sense to me that as you level up, it should also increase, because after I max out a skill, I want to be able to say, wow, I have a max skill level, and I think it should hit everything within 50 yards instead of just 5. It should look cooler. It shouldn't just feel cooler.
Yeah, and that's and again, we're kind of assuming that, but it seems that would make a lot of sense. That a level 1 Indigo rune in Ray of Frost is going to be a relatively small swirling vortex, but the level 2 is going to be larger and larger and larger and larger. And that's again the level of customization is just gigantic with this Runestone system. It's really unbelievable in all honesty. So again, we're going to go back to what I'd initially mentioned, looking at the different functions of each rune. So we can start off with the Golden Rune. Now, the Golden Rune, it seems to generally affect resources. And we'll go kind of straight through them real quick. The Whirlwind, the example of that was reduced fury cost. The Sweeping Wind increased spirit regeneration. So instead of reducing the cost, it actually helped you regenerate spirit faster. For the Ray of Frost, it decreased arcane power cost. Now, here's a little monkey wrench tossed into this whole thing, though. The Golden for the Cluster Arrow made it so that instead of grenades, the skill spawns shadow creatures that attack nearby enemies and life leech to the Demon Hunter. But before we talk about that, let's just go into the last one, which is the Acid Cloud, which afflicts enemies with disease effects that deals damage over time. So again, out of 5, we saw the Golden Rune affect resources in 3 of them. So when we say generally, it is that. It's just generally. But in terms of these differences, I'm going to assume that they didn't want things to be static for every class, for every spell. That's why they're kind of throwing things into the mix. Thoughts on that, Dylan?
I absolutely think that's true, and I also think that doing that's a smart way of doing because it affects class balance. If I have this character with these abilities. If you're gonna do a static? Okay, well this rune does 20% damage across the board. It gives you much less versatility. Whereas this class is lacking in AOE, so let's give them ability to turn this skill into an AOE or a dot or something of that nature.
Now, I mean, I do think that there's always going to be the exception to the rule. However, we don't really know what the Demon Hunter's resource system is just yet. All we know is that there's going to be 2 different pools, I guess, of skills. So, I mean, if it's going to work as how we assume, basically it's going to be like a check and balance kind of a system. The more shadow spells you use, the more hatred spells you're going to have to use, if that makes sense. Basically, using one takes it away from that side and puts it to the other side. Mm-hmm. So if we use this, what is it? Instead of grenades, the skill spawns shadow creatures. So maybe using that, basically it decreases the pool you have for that current skill spec, and then it puts it back into the other side. So it could still potentially use their resource or affect the Demon Hunter's resource system.
Sure. That seems fair. That seems like a fair assumption. Something else, I mean, this is completely off base, and there's no there's nothing to back up what I'm about to say, but let's just pretend that the Demon Hunter's resource system had some sort of a martyr-esque ability built into it where you have to sacrifice life to use certain types of abilities. Then technically the Golden Rune spawning creatures that help regenerate your life, well, then it affects your resource system technically. If that's just way out there. I don't know where I'm drawing that from, but I'm just trying to pull this back to try to make it a little more consistent across the board. But again, based on just looking at that specific one example, and we're not going to go through all of them. But as mentioned, generally speaking, the Golden Runes are going to affect resources. Crimson damage, Indigo area of effect, and Obsidian and Alabaster just seem to be all over the board. But those general things, the Golden resource, Crimson damage, and Indigo AoE, that's almost always the case. And then we're just looking at kind of Blizzard throwing things into the mix so that it's not 100% of the time, just most of the time.
And I mean, like I said, there's always going to be the exception to the rule. However, like Dennis was just saying, it kind of seems like that's always going to be how each specific rune works. And I mean, this is great because not only does it give us 20 skills to effectively have a choice from. Now we've got 140? Yeah, I think we've got about 140 skills per class now to choose from, not just 20, which, that's huge.
Yeah, and not only that, again, we have different levels of each and every one of those, too. This level's 1 through 7, and then we're pumping skills into the spells as well. And I think just looking at this, I don't remember the exact number, and I want to go as far to say as it's like over 9 million. They said there's like 9 million possible combinations for each class in terms of spells. It was something absurd. It was just like an astronomical
between runes
number.
And skills and traits and all that stuff. That makes sense.
And that seems like mind-boggling, does it not? That's unreal. That level of customization, and that's something that's really the focus of Diablo. It's you can make your character however the F you want. You can just do whatever, and there's so much variation. And I think this is going to be part of the reason, and I don't want to go off on a tangent on it, but I'm going to say this is part of the reason why they're saying that balance in PvP is going to be an issue. It's going to be difficult. It's not necessarily impossible, but difficult, just because of the wide array of possibilities.
Absolutely. Simply every skill can be, measured against not only the skills, but, what runes you decide to use them. But I have a whole other thought to the replayability of leveling because of runes. You can literally use the exact same skills, and by runing them differently, you can get an entirely different play experience. With how long we've all been waiting for this game, I'm going to be playing it a lot. So the idea of being able to, not only make one of every character and level them through it, but being able to replay them and get a whole new feel for it is something I'm excited for. What about you, Kevin?
Actually, that's a really good point. It's good that you bring that up because looking more strategically at it, you might go with one set of skills and runes for normal than you would for nightmare, because it just might change things depending on levels, and I don't know, because it depends on. I guess we don't really know how things are going to scale depending on normal, nightmare, and hell. But I mean, if things scale with level, or things have different resistances and immunities, I know that they're going to be doing them separately. But I mean, if something is fire immune and you have normal Hydra, maybe you want to go ahead and stick the Indigo rune in it. So now you have magic Hydra that are shooting at magic missiles that'll do more damage to those fire immune type monsters. So I mean, it now it's all becomes strategy, especially since you can just pop and swap those runes at any point in time.
Yeah, no, definitely. That definitely makes a lot of sense. And again, those variants just are going to make replayability pretty unbelievable.
I just wanted to expand on something that Kevin mentioned. Depending on what you've looked at, you may or may not realize that removing a rune does not destroy it. So you can actually take out them and then you can trade them, or you could use them on other characters. So there's going to be something to change it, so you can't do it in combat. But they really are going to encourage a lot of rune swapping, which is nice because you get to try a lot.
Yeah, and last I heard that was the case. Now, that's also going to leave us wondering as to the scarcity of these runes. That's something that's still kind of up in the air, how available these things are going to be to us, how often we're going to find them. And I know that the levels of runes, I think it was... oh God! I hope I don't miss. I hope I don't mess this one up. I think it was 1 through 4 was in normal. Nightmare was 5 and 6, and then Hell was 7.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think just recently Bashuk said that they're going to be allowing a couple levels past either 5 or 7 to drop normally. So I believe that's correct. But then everything past that we're going to have to pick up, or we're going to have to trade for and stuff.
Sure. So
where's that gems? Wow.
Well, yeah. That's. I think you're talking about gems.
I think I'm talking about gems. I'm sorry,
but it's okay. So yeah, we know that we're not going to get in our first playthrough of normal. We're not going to get a level 7 rune. That's not going to happen. We're gonna have to wait till we're max level and we've played through Hell before that's even really a possibility. But aside from the levels of runes, I just wonder how often these runes are going to be dropped. I in all honesty, I feel like given the fact that they're going to allow you to remove runes without them being destroyed, that leads me to believe that they're not going to be flooding the market with runes, because they're never going to be leaving the market, right? That would make sense to me. Unless they can be salvaged. I know they can be salvaged, and that's going to give you rare materials. So okay, that's a way of them leaving. But in terms of you acquiring them for your character, and the fact that putting a rune doesn't permanently lock it in place with a spell and you can remove it, I feel like then, with that said, that runes are going to be somewhat scarce.
I have seen, and there's no, I can't tell you, oh, well, this is what they're going to be doing as a con dump with these runes, but there's some blue posts saying they have interesting ideas of ways to remove them from the economy, which, obviously that's going to be like, salvaging or, some type of crafting, but there is going to be something in play that lets you use the runes that you don't need to further your character, which is kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. Actually, kind of just a correction. I just looked it up real quick. It looks like there's 8 levels, unless this is just a mistake. But it looks like 1 through 3 is normal, 4, 5 is nightmare, and 6 through 8 is hell. And it looks like they have like different levels of quality, which is stone, silver, and gold, normal, nightmare, and hell. And then it also looks like you downplayed that number of possible skills. It's about 97 billion different combinations.
so I guess that was a little off. But there you go. That just further proves the point that customization in this game is just nuts. It's through the roof. You can do whatever you want with your characters almost. You're not tied down to those 20. When we first hear, oh, Diablo 3, I've got a character, he has 20 to 30 possible spells. It is a lot more than that. You have to just think of runes as various spells that you can just swap and mix and match and do whatever you want with. So yeah, pretty nuts. Now, I know that prior we had talked about the effect of this kind of in the replayability of the game, going through the PvE game, normal, nightmare, hell, and once you finish a character, replaying it with different runes, even in possibly the same skills, and getting a completely different playthrough experience. And then I know, Kevin, you had touched on strategy. So with strategy in mind, let's just talk about really quickly the difference here between rune skills in PvE and PvP. Now, I'm pretty sure I can say for all of us that everyone here in this particular podcast are huge fans of PvP, and we're going to be doing a lot of it. So with a PvP mindset, just looking at the small little plug that was given to us last week for the spells, there are some obvious ones that look to be completely PvP focused. Just a quick glance through it. I'm looking at the cluster arrow. Alabaster rune adds a stun effect to the grenade explosions. The Ray of Frost, which one is it? The Obsidian Rune decreases the beam damage but increases reduction in target movement and attack speed, so that's another crowd control snare area of effect thing. Let's take a quick look here. The Whirlwind for the Barbarian, if you toss in an Obsidian Rune, that provides a Barbarian with immunity to immobilizing effects. So those three examples are that is PvP focused. There's no doubt about those.
Now, I'm kind of curious as to how the Alabaster Rune is going to work in PvP. It's for Whirlwind. Crit Strike confuses enemies, and it forces them to attack their allies for a short amount of time. Now, I mean, obviously that's probably for PvE, but I'm kind of curious if that's going to work the same in PvP, or if they're going to have to change how that works. Because, I mean, when you're playing team games, you hit your enemy, and they turn around and get confused and start hitting their enemy, or their ally.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like it would work out pretty sweet.
If that were the case, my personal experience would say that that's probably not going to happen, because very rarely do you see in a PvP environment someone completely losing control of their character.
Well, I mean, World of Warcraft, when a warlock...
I guess you have mind control for a priest in World of Warcraft, so I guess that's... I don't know, it's possible. It is quite possible. But going back to the point of the focus between the runes, their effect on your spells, and where it's primarily going to be used, something that I have wondered about, and that's something that I've talked with Tempest about here, because we're both big PvP players, and that's something that we've just always done when we play games together. There's always going to be a focus in any arena or PvP environment of a game of this nature of controlling your enemy. If you can slow them down, if you can stun them, if you can stop them from moving, that's going to be a major focus. So any stuns, any snares, or anything that removes these are going to be obvious PvP focuses and not necessarily as useful in PvE. Again, the Obsidian Rune for the Whirlwind of the Barbarian, making the Barbarian immune to immobilizing effects, that's probably not going to be used in PvE as much. I would much more expect something like the Indigo Rune, which spawns smaller whirlwinds that deal direct damage all around you. Something like that's going to be great for hordes and hordes of monsters. But in PvP, the focus is generally controlling your enemy, giving yourself mobility, and then strong direct damage. That's kind of the typical theme that you see in most PvP builds. But one thing that I'm definitely going to be wondering is, again, looking at these examples that we've seen, each and every one of them seem to have a rune that either you're going to have something that generally increases damage and something that increases a snare or crowd control. So I wonder where that balance is going to be found between the two. If we have 7 skills, are we going to focus all of our skills to controlling the enemy? Or are we going to make sure we have the 1 or 2 that are just straight up increased damage runes, and then the rest are controlling the enemy? Tempest, your thoughts on that?
You know what? Why not both? That's the really cool thing about the runes, is it lets you take skills that are designed for one thing and add a little flair to it. Obviously, I haven't seen anything from Blizzard released yet, or else we would have posted it. But I did read where some of the escape or the quickly movement speed, the Barbarians rushing charge, and the Witch Doctor's Spirit Walk, with runes they can actually cause damage if you pass through an opponent. So you could have a specific ability, which is an escape, like teleport, Spirit Walk, and you can actually add damage to it, which is very PvP. You have to have those escapes in order to survive. I think that's pretty much a given. But you can actually rune to add damage, so you can, if you want, make yourself a more aggressive playstyle even with your escape abilities.
Something else I'm really kind of excited to see is, I know specifically the Barbarian has the Ancient Spear, which is kind of like the Scorpion-style spear where you launch it out and bring your enemy close to you. I cannot wait to see what rune effects add to that. Are they just gonna put like a giant claw that cuts your enemy in half for one of the runes? Or I don't know. It seems like, and these are the kind of things that I get excited about, and I know all Diablo fans do. I know you guys do as well. Just the possibilities that are before us. So still kind of on that PvP focus. Kevin, what do you think is gonna be a focus once it comes to the PvP arena of how you're gonna be ruining your skills?
I mean, I'm kind of with Dylan on this. I mean, having a nice variety of skills would really help because, I mean, being able to crowd control and deal some damage because, as we all know, all classes are DPS classes. And actually, this is where Tyler does his little DPS noise. Kind of missing him right now. Right. So, I mean, basically, I think having a good variety, or if you don't plan on having a good variety, making sure that you have the right team set up, because I mean, if you're doing 3v3 and getting ranked, you better make sure that you have at least one person that specializes in crowd control that can take care of controlling the crowd, while the other two people, you know, DPS away at them. So I mean, it's all strategy, really.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting, and the most interesting thing about everything is we're going to just repeat ourselves once more is the vast array of customization. There are so many possibilities. What was that number again, Kevin?
97 billion.
97 billion for each character, okay? And you're going to have a 3v3 arena, so that's 97 billion times 3. It's just it's astronomical, the range of possibilities that are going to be taking place, and it's going to, I feel like because of that, it's going to be quite some time until, you know, cookie cutter builds are eventually going to come. That's just, there's, you know, it just how it works. Eventually there is a most ideal situation. You're always going to have players who want to kind of do their own thing and kind of go with builds that are a little bit you know, mixed up, but overall you have these general strong builds that are going to be prevalent, maybe being changed through patches for balance changes, but eventually it's going to come. But I feel specifically because of this huge level of customization that it's actually going to be a while before the community comes about finding these most effective, most efficient builds for the arena.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, looking at how StarCraft 2 works, basically how Blizzard explained things was that they didn't patch stuff right away because they knew that there was stuff that the public still hadn't figured out yet, especially during the beta, right when the game had first come out. There were things that people in the US that were doing that people in Korea were not doing, and vice versa. So I mean, there were still dozens of things that needed to be figured out before they could even patch anything, just because there were so many different viable different builds that people weren't really figuring out how to counter everything because they just hadn't thought of it yet. So I mean, for Diablo 3, this is going to take, I don't even know how much longer than it was for StarCraft 2, because I mean 97 billion combinations for each class. I mean, it's going to be ridiculous because you do one thing, I find a counter for it, and then Dylan finds a counter for that, and then we just keep going around and around and around and around and around until we finally hit the max amount. It's going to take years.
Yeah, I mean, and then on top of that, you have to add in the fact that, you know, we have got character gear, which is going to play a role. I mean, that's a huge, gear is a big defining factor in how you perform in both PvP and PvE. And until the gear levels out, then it's not even going to be until that point reaches, and then beyond that when you're going to be able to figure out kind of the ideal situations. Because until everyone's at a generally the same level, at max level, and everyone's got kind of more or less the same type of gear, then you can figure out proper balances. Because there's going to be a case where I walk into the arena with an axe that just two-shots everybody, and they're going to cry about whatever spells that I'm using, but it's not the spells, it's the fact that my weapon's just absurd. Like, those kind of situations will arise. And I'm interested to see, you know, this isn't something that has been incredibly prevalent in the Diablo universe. There's definitely a few notable exceptions, but I'm interested to see how many kind of maybe not activated abilities, but how much gear and weapons are going to provide additional effects for your character. For example, the Enigma, you know what I mean? Things like that. I wonder if that's going to play much of a role in Diablo 3 as well. Any ideas on that, Kevin?
I don't think Kevin's looking to it. I seem to remember Blizzard saying there will never be another Enigma in Diablo, just simply because they only wanted the sorcerer, the wizard, to be able to teleport.
Well,
but
not specifically the Enigma because of the teleport, the imbalance there, but I just mean having a piece of gear or an item that gives your character an additional effect. You know, think of some top end axe that spawns a follower for you,
right?
Or something.
So like,
that's just a crazy example.
So like chance to cast charge bolt on hit or something like that.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess that's possible. But one thing that they did say that Dylan was just saying was that they didn't want armor or any kind of items to be able to give you another class's spells and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, I guess that aside, I'll concede to that. But maybe even further beyond that, maybe something that's not even other character spells. I wonder if that's gonna happen. I mean, it could just completely be ruled out, and I could just be talking gibberish right now.
But it's possible.
Yeah, but I guess the point is that, you know, the end game gear is definitely going to play a role one way or another, be it straight up stats or maybe there possibly being some additional abilities added through the higher end gear, you know, some high end set legendary items or something.
Stuff like life leech and mana leech, or I guess resource leech, however you might have to call it. I mean, that's kind of stuff that I would expect to see on end game weapons. So I mean, I guess it couldn't. I don't know. I don't really think it's far fetched to think that there would be, like, you know, chance to cast like charge bolt or stuff like that on a hit, or other things along those lines.
Yeah, and so that's just further kind of extrapolating on the fact that there's just so much variation in this game that it is going to be a little bit difficult to attain that balance, and I think it's just going to be something that takes quite some time because of that, for that very reason. All right, now we're going to move on to the recent announcement that the Talisman was removed from the game. Now, if you don't already know, the Talisman was kind of an inventory item that was going to hold charms. Now, charms in the game are basically just increased stats. You would get a charm for plus 20 vitality, for example, and you would put it used to be the case that you'd put it in your inventory and then your character would get that effect. Well, what they had set up for Diablo 3 was they had the Talisman, and instead of taking up inventory space, you could just put charms into the Talisman. It would take up Talisman space, and then that would increase your character. Well, it seems like currently what we're looking at is the Talisman has been removed. They've kind of decided through feedback and iteration that it didn't make a whole lot of sense, because all charms were the same thing that gear gave you. So it looks like what they're kind of along the lines of thinking at this point is, well, instead of adding charms, why don't we just have those stats in the gear itself, instead of adding this entire new system to take up all this extra space and something else to manage. It was just kind of another thing to manage that seemed unnecessary. Dylan, what do you think about the removal of the Talisman and subsequently the removal of charms?
I actually, at first I was disappointed because I always loved the charms, and then I thought back to, you know, Diablo II and how much time I spent, you know, gathering faster hit recovery and all the other PvP charms resists. And I know they said that they originally had an idea for the Talisman, but then it became way too complicated, so then they simplified it. And in its current incarnation, it just doesn't make sense. But that we can very likely expect to see it in the future. But as it is now, I mean, like they said, everything that you can get from a charm, you can get it from armor, and it's just so much more exciting. Like, oh, wait a minute, I just found this awesome new chest piece or axe, and it is seeing, oh, this small charm. And it just doesn't have quite the same, reward factor. So, I like the idea of it, having it eventually, as in, like, okay, well, later game content, the more you have to customize your character, the better. But in the beginning, like as it is now, I mean, we're going to run right into Diablo 3. We're going to have to gear up. We have to learn the game, learn the rune system, learn the crafting system. So I'm pretty okay with having a little bit of time before they introduce the charms into the picture.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. And if you want to think about it in Diablo 2, there were no charms in Diablo 2 Classic. I don't believe that they came out until the expansion pack anyway. So, I mean, if this stuff waited until either a major patch somewhere down the road or the first expansion pack or something, I mean, it's not like it would be anything brand new to us. And as far as the charms being completely removed, I don't know. Because, I mean, if they are planning on having them in eventually, maybe they'll start having them drop a little bit earlier, so at least we have the chance to find them. Maybe not use them, maybe just stash them, because, I mean, I wouldn't really put it past Blizzard making items that do nothing for us at the time, like Standard of Heroes. Cool. Now I've got 100 of them. I can't do anything with them. So, You know?
That's really funny. Yeah, it's an interesting idea, and I know some people are going to cry foul right away, and they're going to say, so Blizzard thinks we're too stupid to manage our gear and our charms. And I'm just going to say that it's not so much the case that's not the case, that we're going to be too overwhelmed and inundated with information that we won't be able to decipher between what should I be doing for charms and what should I be doing for gear. I think it's definitely more the case that it almost seems unnecessary, because again, all it did was add those stats that you were getting through gear anyways, but it was just a separate system to manage. And then the idea becomes, well, it was all about customization. Well, yes, that's the case, that it does improve your customization. But again, later down the road, if they do incorporate it like they did with Diablo II, if it comes out in a patch or an expansion or anything, then we can kind of dive further into that. But as we discussed further, I mean, as it is, it's because of all the variants and because of all the combinations between runes and gemming as well. I mean, you can think of, again, the rune system is going to be like what the gems are. All this is adding stats. With all that stuff, it's going to be so long before we figure out how to balance anyways, that just adding that extra system kind of does nothing more than kind of further that and confuse the system a bit more. So,
and I mean, aside from all that, just like Dylan said, it's a lot more exciting to find a sick piece of chest armor than a nice little tiny rune or charm. Sorry, like, hey, this looks cool. Oh, nice, it gives me 5 health.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's pretty interesting. But anyways, one of those things that once more, as we work our way up to beta and we're still kind of speculating on certain things, this is again an example of something that we're just gonna have to wait and see how they end up deciding to do it. But as of now, it does look like the Talisman and as such charms will not be coming out during the release, and I guess we'll figure out more specifically during the beta if that is in fact the case. All right, so now we're going to move on to our poll discussion. Last week's poll, we did ask about BlizzCon ticket prices. So you want to go ahead and let everyone know the results of that, Kevin?
Sure. So basically, everybody, well, I mean, not everybody, but a majority of the people said that ticket price doesn't matter compared to the travel and, everything else you got to spend. So essentially, the extra $25 compared to, the hundreds and hundreds you're going to spend on food and airfare and hotel, gas, goodies and swag and whatever, it's not that big of a deal. It kind of makes sense. I mean, tickets might be overpriced, I guess, but I mean, Blizzard could easily get away with it. They could jack up the price on our $100-$200 and they would still sell out in 20-30 minutes. I mean, tickets for this year's BlizzCon are sold out, and I want to say that it was about 15 minutes for each one. I don't know, that sounds about right. But I mean, that 15 minutes was just because people were waiting in line. If you didn't get into the queue within the first minute, you're screwed out of a ticket.
Yeah. So I mean, that makes sense that most people would agree upon that. And I think in last place was people voted that they could be a bit lower. That was kind of the last one. And obviously, personally, people do want to spend less. You want to get more for less. Everyone's like that. But you also have to be realistic about it. And again, given the fact that they sell it so fast, we're just going to say that they could obviously charge more. So let's just be happy that it is what it is.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like an exclusive event. Only a certain amount of people can go. I mean, it's basically like E3, but just for Blizzard. And E3's tickets are ridiculous, and I don't know. I think it's fair enough.
All right, so that wraps up last week's poll. Now, at the moment, we're not going to have a poll for this week. We're gonna that's going to come out in the next DiabloCast, which is going to be released next Friday. There's just because of the layover and because of the oddity of the timing of this podcast, it's not making a lot of sense for us to come out with a poll this week. So stay tuned next Friday with the next DiabloCast. There's going to be a new poll for you guys to vote on. And yeah, that about does it. So let's just go right into the next segment, which is going to be user questions. All right, so the first question is coming from Marcel, and Marcel asks, will there be shrines like in Diablo II? Kevin?
Basically, yeah. I mean, Blizzard just recently, a couple months ago, said that they had some cooler-looking shrines that they were working on. So, I mean, as far as we know, they aren't removed. They're still in the game, so yes.
All right, so yes, there are going to be shrines. I think one big note was also the fact that there won't be any negative effects on those shrines.
Makes
Is
sense.
that correct? Yeah, so we're just going to be seeing just normal buff shrines. There's not going to be any explosive or poison shrines that are half killing our characters while we're already in combat with someone else.
Or Diablo 1 shrines where it remove like 5 strength or something permanently. Oh, man.
All right, so the next question comes from Hank, and he asks, what happens when you die in Diablo 3 if you're in a group? And how will the online thing work when joining an arena or dungeons, etc.? In terms of death, Dylan, would you like to clarify that for him?
Absolutely. Now, if you basically when your character dies in a party, there'll be a short window of time to when a party member can actually physically touch your body, and you'll be revived. If you expire that time, you have to run back.
Yeah, you auto revive at the nearest checkpoint you hit, and the checkpoints basically pops up and it's like checkpoint, every so often. I mean, they haven't given any hardcore statistics as to how many checkpoints or whatever, but basically it's gonna, it's essentially just it's not like stupid amount of running between rogue encampment all the way down to catacombs level 4. So yeah.
All right. And in the second half of the question, the first part of the second half of the question is asking about joining in arenas. Now, I know arenas specifically, that's going to be a queue-up system, much in the vein of what we see in StarCraft 2. You can join as a group or you can join by yourself, and you're going to queue up for a game, and then there's going to be a matchmaking system with a ladder provided specifically for the 3v3, and through that, they're going to match you up with allies, match you up with opponents that are comparable to your level, and that's how that's going to happen. Now, in terms of dungeons, I'm assuming it's going to be kind of like you can, like it has been in the past where you start a game and people can just join it, unless it's password protected, privatized or whatever, or your friends can join games that you're in. Is that pretty much the case, Kevin? Does that seem like what we're looking at?
I mean, yeah, it sounds about right. I mean, anything on Battle.net is really speculation at this point, based on what we know about StarCraft 2, and I guess World of Warcraft, but I mean, that sounds about right.
Yeah, all right. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to throw in, I just thought of it. As far as the resurrection for an arena, as far as I know, once you die, you are dead until the match ends. There is no resurrection.
I believe that's correct, yeah. And then for hardcore, if you die, you're dead. That's something.
Suckers.
Something they're looking into is basically because there's going to be more than one round. So if in hardcore, it's still up in the air. If you die in round 1, maybe you come back for round 2 if your team wins or something along those lines. I don't know. It's just something that's still up in the air.
Yeah, that's definitely major speculation, and that's actually there's been a lot of complaints from the hardcore community pertaining to that, because they're wondering, are we not going to be able to PvP more than once? Because I mean, let's be honest, you're going to die in arena. That's what happens. So
it's more like a gladiator battle now,
Yeah. So if that's what you want to do, then go at it. But
talk about hardcore, right?
No, right?
Yeah, pretty nuts. All right, next question comes from Jeff. This is kind of a personal question. He asks, which rune effects are your favorite overall or for individual classes? So I'm going to say personally, we'll start with myself here. I know I'm going to be playing the Barbarian, and I have to say that based off of the knowledge we currently have, the specific rune that makes your whirlwind makes it so that you cannot become snared, that is nuts, and that's going to be so abused in the arena. So that's my personal favorite. Dylan, how about you? What's your personal favorite so far?
Oh, it depends what you're looking for. I have two. For the Ray of Frost, my personal favorite for what I'll probably use is the one where it actually decreases their attack speed and movement speed. But as far as just being so damn cool looking, it turns it into an AoE, the Indigo. It's just beautiful.
Mm-hmm. All right, so Kevin, personal favorite thus far?
I mean, actually, so far, I kind of think that the golden runestone for the Demon Hunter is pretty sweet. That basically it's like the vice versa. Instead of grenades, it summons shadow creatures, which I think is pretty sweet. Just by shooting an arrow or shooting some grenades, it pops up shadowy dudes that just beat the shit out of everything.
Yeah, and they have life leech too, which is actually pretty cool. That's going to be a lifesaver, I know, for many people.
So it's like spawning a bunch of blood golems.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so the last question we're going to be answering this week comes from Daniel. It's kind of a little bit lengthy. He asks, what class do you believe has the best balance of brute force and strategy? I don't see myself as the hulking barbarian. I also don't want to be completely uninvolved in the combat like the demon hunter. I'm new to RPGs, and I don't know if something fits the description. A basic idea of that would be much appreciated. Well, in terms of balance between brute force and strategy, that's, I don't know. I feel, because of the fact that there's really no healing classes, I feel like given the fact that runes are going to completely change how we can play our character for the most part, any class has that capability. In terms of general class strength, this is obviously way too soon to make any comments on that. We have no idea how the balance is going to lie. There's tons of theory crafting, but that's just pulling stuff out of your ass, basically, because we have no idea how the balance is going to work between the characters right now. But do either of you have any suggestions for him? He's looking for something not a barbarian, but not a demon hunter, but kind of a healthy mix in between.
I would probably say the monk, just because, I mean, the monk can kind of go up close and melee, but still is pretty quick like the demon hunter. And as far as the demon hunter goes, I wouldn't say the demon hunter is completely uninvolved in the combat, because like Dennis was just saying, every class is a DPS class, none of them are healing. So I mean, they all have the ability to dish out damage and, you know, obviously stay involved in the combat. Now, specifically for the demon hunter, they can run up close and drop traps and stuff like that, and then run back and then fire some arrows. So, I mean, obviously they're definitely involved in the combat. But as far as the balance, I would probably have to go ahead and say the monk.
Yeah, I'm right there with Sixen on the monk. Just as far as, you know, you're in the action, it's not as much ranged combat. But talk about strategy. You have to build up your combo moves. You have finishing moves. They have some of the strongest moves in the game, but they have to have them in the proper sequence in order to utilize them. So, try out the monk.
All right, so there you go. Hopefully we helped you, Daniel, pick out your class for the upcoming release of Diablo 3, whenever that may be. And that pretty much wraps it up for this episode of DiabloCast. As always, we thank you guys so much for listening. And for Dylan and for Kevin, this is Dennis, and thank you guys, and we will see you next time.
Take it easy, guys.
Hey, thank you all. Have a good night.
And vibrating.
Fix vibrating.
Okay.
Hope that was a phone at least.
Yeah.
I picked up what I thought was my notepad, and it was a build order, and I was a little confused. It's like, okay, we're starting off with 15 hatch, and then go.
We should probably just do that. Today we're going to talk about 15 hatch, 9 hatch. Like, what?
All right.
How to really get all the people
Super confused. If we just made it a
bitching
StarCraft
about
DiabloCast.
bitching about your name is Force SC2, and then you do everything.
People are just
Yeah.
idiots. People are just idiots.
Even though I'm the one that said it's dumb.
You're dumb.
You're dumb.
All right, I'm gonna go in 3, 2.